Hello and welcome to my latest weekly video news from Madison's. Well, after last week's slightly light-hearted look at a number of interesting stories affecting the estate agency world, I promise you this week I bring you a bit more of an economic update. Of course, mortgages are in the headlines. They've reached their highest level for quite some time. Many households feeling the pinch of that, combined with rising energy costs. And of course, our doom monger media is predicting a crash like that we saw in the 1990s. So I want to take a look back at what was going on in the 1990s, a time when I was born in 1972. So I was 20 in 1992, which was the last big sort of high housing crash. And I remember it very well, not long after I got a job in a bank and was feeling all the effects of that. So let's have a look at some of the statistics of 1990 and why personally I don't think that is what we're going to see now, and I'll give you my reasons why. So back in 1990, I'm going to have to refer to my figures, inflation was sitting at just under 10%, base rate was at 14%, the typical mortgage ran at about 16%, that was quite painful, and unemployment was at 5.6% and house prices were falling. If you fast forward a couple of years to 1992, which is when UK left the ERM, it wasn't looking very good at all. Inflation had dropped massively to 3.2%. Base rate was sitting at 15% and unemployment had risen to 10% and prices had dropped by 18% for houses. There had been quite a crash. And that's because a lot of what makes people assess their wealth in this country is what they feel the value of their property is worth. So when you've got rising inflation and employment and you're trying to control that, if they can make house prices drop a bit, then actually it brings all that into order. And that is very much what happened then. House prices dropped and then inflation calmed down and everything started to look like it would sort itself out because mortgages were sitting at a really, really high level to control people's spending. So why now? What is different now about that scenario that led to those house price drops? And why don't I think it will happen? Well, there's a number of reasons. And as ever, as many of you will know, I did economics as part of my degree, my second degree, and I majored in behavioural economics. And I therefore take great attention to a wonderful guy, Roger Martin Fagg, who's also a behavioural economist. And he has some great insights, which I read lots and lots of different reports. His, I personally find, seem to bear more weight. There are always different arguments. You can find evidence to support whatever story, but I personally like what he says. And there's lots of good reasons why we sit in a very different environment. So back in the 1990s, Barclays and NatWest were effectively insolvent. They had to call in over 300,000 loans. So you had houses being repossessed, businesses going bust because of debts being called in, and that created a very different economy. Now the banks are very well capitalised. They've been stress testing mortgages for quite a while and they're sitting on quite healthy balance books, so they're not like they were in the 1990s. Affordability as well and wage growth, that is up. So wage growth has risen by about 7.2% this year as more employees are demanding higher wages to combat inflation. So wage growth is very, very good. You also have a lot of people with joint mortgages now. That wasn't so common back in the 1990s, but lots of people now with joint mortgages, which means their overall affordability is very, very strong. Unemployment sits very low. We have a very full labour market in the country at the moment. And of course, we have the wonderful bank of mum and dad. It's estimated that about £150 billion of excess money are sat in mum and dad's bank account, and they will use that to help their children if they have to. And finally, energy rises are expected to drop. So inflation will ease. We saw that last week for the first time in a long time. Inflation is easing and it's expected to do so. And finally, final point, we do have a housing shortage at the moment. That was shown. Michael Gove came out this week. Ever since the 1980s with Margaret Thatcher, where she introduced the right to buy, we've had an obsession with being property owners in this country. And Michael Gove introduced a new range of measures to create new towns and villages, and he's looking to extend Cambridge as his first line of sight. So we do have a housing shortage, and for all of those reasons, I think house prices will drop a bit this year, but overall there will not be a housing market crash. I don't think so, because of all those reasons. You can call me, debate endlessly if you want. Who knows? We will see as the time goes on what actually happens. But that's my thoughts. Light-hearted stories, head over to the Rightmove blog. They've got a great couple of features on Barbie homes and tennis homes. I searched my books for anything that would fit into those brackets. I could find none. So I'm just going to tell you two lovely properties that we have launched. A lovely 3-bedroom penthouse apartment on the Ridgeway, which is just off Broadwater Down. A lovely, lovely apartment, £425,000, beautiful south-facing accommodation, beautifully presented, and a fabulous house on Stevens Road, 4 bedrooms, beautifully presented. You move in straight away, guide of £825,000 on that one. If either of interest, give us a call. Hope you have a great week. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.